welcome back to What's the Point? What's the Point is a topical, political podcast, Jerry, highlighting for the people in North Lanarkshire all the shenanigans and backroom culture that currently exists within local politics. And I would like to say thank you very much for joining me today. I've got my good friends back, Jerry Brennan.
Thank you, Greg. It's always an extraordinary pleasure to be here.
Jerry, may I just add that there is an uncanny resemblance between you and the evil guy out of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I'll cut to a clip now.
Okay.
It's very uncanny, Jerry.
Thanks for that. I'll hold back my compliments for you until later on.
And my good friend,
I'm just waiting on this one.
my good friend David Crichton, all the way from sunny Motherwell, Jerry.
He's a wisher man.
Overton.
Overton by all accounts.
Golfing record, Seve Ballesteros.
Outstanding.
He's a bandit, is what he is, and I have to share with the good people of North Lanarkshire that I have been unfortunate enough on 2 occasions to have accompanied him at Curlick Golf Course, where he's an unashamed cheat.
An unashamed cheat, Jerry. So much so you had to make a wee video about him.
Yes.
I think the most accomplished word you used there is accompanied, because you certainly weren't playing golf, my friend. So I'm not entirely sure what game you were playing, but you weren't playing golf.
I think the public need to see that wee video. We'll cut to that just now.
I'm Davy Crichton, and I'm a lifelong golf cheat. My motto is this: if you can't beat them, cheat them.
We'll get some.
So gentlemen, it's been a busy old week in politics. So we now have our new change mantra. Labour government, new dawn rising. And all of a sudden, it's austerity.
Change is actually quite a good word, especially if you're an older person, because let me tell you, the energy cap going up, the winter fuel payment being removed will mean that you have less change in your pocket this year than you had last year. So I think older people especially are in for a really, really difficult few months this winter.
I think that the comparison, because there's so many options that this Labour government have had in terms of their kind of fiscal responsibility and how they're trying to redress this supposed black hole. But when you look at the people that they're targeting, it's quite incredible for a Labour government to be targeting, as I say, the older people, even single individuals now, because they're now mentioning the council tax kind of single person deduction being scrapped and all sorts. These things will make huge differences to people's lives individually.
I mean, I think that one it's especially awful for single parents. I mean, I'm a single parent with 4 kids, through no fault of my own. I'm a widower. I'll be punished for that. So I will lose potentially my 25% discount for council tax. So thank you, Anas. Thank you, Keir, for your generosity, and I'm sure all the older people in North Lanarkshire who are going to be impacted by the winter fuel cuts will be grateful too. And it's around 40,000 of them.
40,000.
So in North Lanarkshire, last year around 55,000 people received that, and it brought in about £9 million into the North Lanarkshire economy. That reduces to about £1.2 million pounds, a £7 million cut. That's big money. These are big figures.
So a party for the working class, a party for the people, and then all of a sudden we've got a straight out the box attack on pensioners, the most vulnerable in society, and those who, let's not kid on, have paid into the system for years and years and years, and we now find ourselves in a position where we live in one of the coldest countries in Scotland, where our summers don't last that long, where winter kicks in pretty quick, and then now what we're going to have is a number of our pensioners in this country facing that stark choice. Do we heat our home or do we feed ourselves? And I find it absolutely deplorable that we have a Labour government who, again, coming back to it, promised change, promised all austerity was coming to an end, but all of a sudden we're finding that they're attacking them and attacking again. If we look at the single person allowance, we're looking at that potentially coming down the line in the budget. And again, where is this going to stop?
I think I've said before on this, I think locally people have woken up and realised that Labour are not the Labour that they were 30, 40 years or so ago. So all of a sudden they're now faced with a Conservative Party which Scotland have rejected for decades. They've got a Labour government or a Labour Party which has changed their whole face as to how they're perceived by the working class, shall we say, within North Lanarkshire. And then they're looking for what is the alternative to that? And I know I've spoken about it before, but what is the alternative? Because people are genuinely fed up with this binary choice that they've got. So again, we might talk about it. We have done before, sort of by-elections and stuff that are going on just now in North Lanarkshire. I just hope that there's actually an alternative that's out there that is different from what we're being subjected to just now. I genuinely do.
You look at the demographic voting sort of patterns. Older people tend not to vote for Labour across the UK. So
that allegation has actually been made by the Conservatives,
and justifiably so. You can shaft the pensioners because they won't vote for you anyway. And for those who find themselves at the bottom of the heap, those who may well find themselves without the 25% council tax discount, they'll be disenfranchised anyway. Most of them single parents, most of them not in work. I don't know how many of them have IDs, I don't know how many of them vote. But if you make it difficult for that disenfranchised group, well, even more difficult to vote through voter IDs, etc., then you can shaft them too, because they're not going to damage you at the ballot box. It's that squeezed middle group who work.
I want to come back into North Lanarkshire. So we recently elected 3 brand new Labour MPs.
We did indeed.
And 2, well, then again, if we could take the Northern Corridor into the equation as well. We've got 1 MP up there who kind of covers part of Christen but also Eastern Bartonshire. So North Lanarkshire, Eastern Bartonshire, there's a bit of a sort of crossover. And then obviously in Motherwell, I think you kind of got that between Motherwell to Clydesdale.
Clydesdale, that's right, cutting into South Lanarkshire, yeah.
So you've got one similar up there as well. The concern that I have is when I looked at the voting record in relation to the pensioners, all 3 MPs, new, Frank McNally, Pamela Nash, and I can't remember the other one that covers the sort of Northern Corridor area, had all voted in favour of the pensioners cut. And then all of a sudden we get to Shotts, where there's currently a by-election, and I'm certainly not a cynical man, but you have to ask yourself the question when you look at the others who didn't vote, who just basically disappeared. There wasn't an abstention, it was just disappearing.
Maybe he had to go to the bathroom.
Mr. Stevenson didn't vote in relation to that. Now, again, the coincidence of a by-election being held in Shotts, I'm sure has no play or say in which way Mr. Stevenson vote, but I found it rather curious.
You are so cynical.
So cynical. But
just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that everybody isn't out to get you.
well, that's always an interesting concept. So again, Kenny Stevenson's voting record so far, and we take that if it's a case that he's not going to be party whipped, but they're going to allow him just to, like I said, go to the toilet so he doesn't have to participate in such a vote. Is that disingenuous to the people of Shotts and participate?
I think if it's proven that particular individual to benefit or for his party to benefit, I think that sort of political chicanery should be denounced in every corner. You've got to prove it, right enough. I mean, we see it at council too. Often when a difficult policy change takes effect, if there's an election coming up, you'll see councillors move from one committee to the other. I keep a wee careful eye on that. There's much more movement whenever a by-election coming up, people move. They'll no longer be on that particular committee because it's too hot to touch. But you know, one of the good things about having podcasts like this is that we can identify that. We can identify that beforehand, and then we can discuss it.
You've just set a wave of paranoia out there, Jerry. A wave of paranoia. It's not just me anymore.
We all have a job to do, Greg. We all have a job to do.
But do you think Labour has dropped the pooch here? Do you think that again they've not really took into consideration the impact of a decision like that? Because I'm seeing more of an unrest in Scotland. Because again, if you look at Scotland as a whole, I would say that the Scots are more vocal in relation to anybody coming after their pensioners, and what I'm seeing is Labour being held to account on this decision, and I think that potentially it could hamper them when it comes to the Scottish Parliament elections. Do you think Scottish Labour need to kind of do the old duck and get the legs paddling frantically underneath to fix it?
You've got to ask who is going to hold them to account. Because you've got the decision's been taken because people wanted to move away from the Conservative government that they've had for years. But if you bring it back to North Lanarkshire or even Scotland, is that the SNP are in disarray as it seems just now. So, you know, who is actually going to challenge the basis of this just now? And it's interesting the Scottish Government as well just now, is the SNP are trying to force through or push through their annual budget. So you get an annual budget process that's going to be coming up for ratification in December, and final voting on February. Now, as it stands just now, the SNP government don't have the numbers to make that happen. Green have already said they will not be supporting it. Lib Dems have already said they would not be supporting it. So effectively, you're going to get into a situation here just shortly where, are you heading for another Holyrood election before it's scheduled?
David, just for the listeners out there, because some of the viewers or listeners might not put this together, what happens if the Scottish Government cannot get the budget through? Well,
it's interesting because the two chains of thought is that there'll be, firstly, I believe what will happen is that the opposition parties will call for John Swinney to stand down as First Minister. Now, John Swinney, at that point, there would be sufficient within that chamber to remove him as First Minister. The next process then, as I understand it, is that they would need to re-elect a new First Minister. Now, that could be anyone. So let's just say, I don't know, let's say it's Gillian Mackay because she's local, she's young and she's from the Green Party. So let's not say it's Labour or Tory or anything else. Let's just say it's somebody like that. So you've then got... You're laughing.
I'm laughing. I'm thinking about that wee Glaswegian Tory.
What one was that?
Oh goodness, can't remember her name now.
Oh, Annie Wells.
Annie Wells for First Minister.
It could be.
It could be Annie Wells.
Let's be honest. It could be anyone because what it will not be is an SNP First Minister.
Do you not think it's given the calamitous start that Labour has had? It is not in their interest to try and go for the Scottish Government now, although buoyancy for the electorate might be there, but they have, as I said again, dropped the pooch in relation to the decision and the calamitous decision and taking away the pensioners' payments. So really in effect, if it was a case of a by-election, so let's say hypothetically, right, John Swinney is voted out. Yeah. So again, I would see that having to be that it would have to go to another Scottish Government election. That's where I would see that is not in Labour's interest at this precise moment in time.
I disagree with that. I think that the dial has shifted right across the UK,
yeah.
And the dial has shifted in Scotland from SNP domination to disarray. Right, and while that we're in a period of flux, I think things haven't quite settled down yet, and the electorate will not want so quickly to question themselves for voting Labour in. Right, so I think that Labour probably have 18 months to 2 years to denounce what's happened with the Tories, to pretend that they didn't know about the black coal, which they did. Yeah. Remember at the debate that the £18 billion was mentioned, so to turn around and say that we didn't know that there was a 22 billion shortfall. It just means that it's slightly increased, and it's increased because they've paid public sector workers more than perhaps the Tories would.
Train drivers.
Aye.
So it's the train drivers. The train
Aye.
drivers are now getting a bump up for £60,000 a year.
See if the Tories, see if the unions, and I'm not denouncing unions, right? I'm all for workers and I'm all for unions. But if the unions have got you into power, you are bound to pay them back, and that's what they've done.
Because their biggest funder.
So the biggest funder has been repaid, the workers have been repaid, and at least for the next 2 years, sometimes up to 3 years, the pay settlements are agreed, right? So there's no necessarily going to be strikes for rail drivers or whoever it is, because that's been settled. So there is a period of time where Labour can pour the pain on, blame the Tories.
Come back to your original point. This is where I would normally agree with you that Labour.
Because I'm normally right,
would
Greg.
be in the ascendancy. Oh my goodness, delusional. So anyway, normally what would happen is I agree. So I think that they would take the buoyancy for the general election. You're right what you're saying. People have not had the opportunity to analyse what their decision means. Plus also we've not seen the true effects of how far they're prepared to go in relation to austerity measures. But the interesting point is funnily enough, over the last couple of days we've started to see stuff come up about Grangemouth and Petro-Ineos. And we've started to see the whole calamitous stuff that's happening up in Grangemouth now. And the two of them could not be separated by a cigarette paper. So Labour's working in the UK government's the closest we've ever worked with the SNP, and the SNP, this is the closest we've ever worked. I do not think that an election at this stage, given the cosy relationship that seems to be forming, rightly or wrongly, it's not for me to comment, but the position would be, they would be quite happy for the SNP to continue for another year or two in power and then still get lambasted, because let's not kid on about it, the SNP's in downward free fall implosion, so there's nothing at all going to change that. But if you think about it, they're only another scandal away. They've still to announce the First Minister's charges and her husband's charges and all these different other things. There could be calamitous scandals round the corner.
Even in North Lanarkshire, there's
For damage impact, you're going to leave that as long as you can.
I don't know. I don't think there'll be a Holyrood election until 2026, because there has to be one in 2026.
Yeah.
And I don't think there'll be an appetite just now to have one in 2025 should the Scottish Government budget fail to get through, because it can't fail to get through, because ultimately they have to agree in some way, shape or form that spend and that money allocation is allocated so that services across Scotland can still continue. Mm-hmm. So, but what you can still have is the removal of John Swinney from First Minister. Yeah. You can have a Labour, Tory, Green First Minister that's there. You can have a Labour, Lib Dem pact that could work together for that period without calling a Holyrood election. And as you say, still...
Because it's numerical. So how could you have that? I think the SNP's ahead by how many, Jerry?
in the Parliament at the moment. They're the largest. They're by far the largest party. In the election last year, I think in the first past the post, they only got one. They only got one through the regional list. So I think they're about 64 or 65. Mm-hmm. So in a Parliament that's got 129. So they were well up in terms of being the biggest party, but they needed the Greens to give them the majority so that they could get that through.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that if you had other parties that were happy to pull together to pass a budget that wasn't necessarily an SNP budget, then that could still happen and that Parliament continue.
Well, I was going to draw a comparison with North Lanarkshire. That's like Jim Logan Labour and their Tory allies deciding tomorrow that their budget, if it doesn't get through, numerically it would never happen. But all of a sudden you would then have us, SNP and a couple of independents and a Green looking to try and form a coalition. They're always going to outnumber what the position is for us. But again, Jim seems to have it by design that everybody is on the payroll, so El Presidente lives on.
It's difficult when individuals are receiving payment and they're in such prominent positions, whether that's civic positions or leaders of groups, etc. When these bad news stories hit.
Back in, I think we can respectfully disagree in relation to whether an election is going to be called, but one thing we'll probably all agree on is that budget doesn't go through, John Swinney's toast.
I think he's toast. Yeah, he's toast anyway.
So, if it's the case then, and again I just come back to this point of the winter fuel allowance, and all of a sudden now we've got, in my opinion, a population that is absolutely scunnered and outraged, and we've got Labour trying to mitigate and say, oh, we've increased the pensioner allowance, the pension credit allowance, and that will cover your winter fuel. But then we go back to the fact that the fuel cap that is put there, that's been sneakily risen.
Yeah, I mean the fuel cap is set to increase. So at the very time where your winter fuel allowance is being cut, the winter fuel cap is increasing. So it's going to be a really difficult time for older people. I said that before. One of the very sneaky things that the Labour Party did with the winter fuel allowance was that at the point where they decided it was going to be means tested, they devolved it to the Scottish Government, which means that there's no Barnett consequentials. So the Barnett consequentials they enjoyed last year, which allowed them to pay 55,000 people in North Lanarkshire the winter fuel allowance is now reduced. They simply can't do it because it's been devolved, and therefore the Barnett consequentials will be so much less. And that's where they're talking about this. I'm sure it's £60 million that's been cut, or 600 million. I can't remember. We'd need to check that figure. But that's what's cut directly from the Scottish budget as a consequence. As a consequence of that very sneaky, underhand decision, not just to punish the pensioners, but to punish the Scottish Government.
Well, funnily enough, I've been out in sunny Motherwell this week, and I've been talking to local residents and finding out their views in relation to this calamitous decision to cut winter fuel payments for pensioners. So let's take a wee look at that and we'll see what comes back. Thanks very much for agreeing to do the interview. You'll be aware that Labour has recently made the announcement that it will be cutting the winter fuel payments for pensioners, and not just in North Lanarkshire but the whole of the country. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously it doesn't affect me directly, however it's going to affect my mother massively. She's a pensioner living on her own, and already I'm fearing about what the winter's going to bring for her, because her pension barely covers the bills as it is. That's a woman who's worked all her life and she's on a pittance right now, and the winter fuel payments actually helped her through the winter, so it looks like it's going to be up to me to subsidise my mum.
As you'll be aware, council tax reduction for single persons on the cards for a cut for Labour as well in the forthcoming budget. Will that impact your mum as well?
Of course it will. It's going to impact her massively. Not only my mum, I'm a single parent to 2 children, so it's also going to impact me, and it's putting a massive financial strain and pressure financially on myself, because not only do I need to support myself and my 2 children, but my mum. I'll be honest, it sickens me a wee bit when I seen the other day the salaries for the kind of higher paid council workers in North Lanarkshire, and I'm looking at that thinking that it's just so unfair, because I'm working hard, I'm working full time, and like I said, I'm having to support us and my mum, who's worked all her life, by the way. She shouldn't need support at this stage of life. She should actually be comfortable, but you see these people getting high salaries and you think, well, how's it fair? It's just unfair.
Do you think those with the broadest shoulders, especially in the authority, should be paying more in tax, etc.?
100%.
Thank you so much. So you'll be aware that Labour's recently announced that they're going to be doing the winter fuel cuts. What's your opinion of that?
I think it's disgusting.
Disgusting.
You've got people that are depending on that, who are on basic pension. I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones who got a private pension as well. Yeah. But those that haven't, how can they afford to heat their houses? They're getting expense accounts to pay for certain homes. I think that they should be kicked out, and that's me, done for it.
No, listen, I think that the people I spoke to, they share that opinion. The other aspect it is Labour is about to announce it's going to be cutting the single person council tax allowance as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that will have a bigger impact on pensioners?
I think so as well, yeah. Again, they're just penalising those that have paid their dues all their lives.
The other aspect is as well, and one of the questions that's been raised today is if you look at North Lanarkshire Council, I take it North Lanarkshire residents.
Yes.
So North Lanarkshire Council, we expend something like £2.5 million per year on senior management. Do you think that money might be better spent elsewhere?
Those are the vulnerable.
Yeah.
Give it to them.
Well,
You know, they're all getting golden handshakes and big pensions. Why?
Yeah.
Why? You know, people worked all their lives, they're getting nothing.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be a Labour the Labour Party's not a Labour Party anymore. They all went to Eton School, they're all public school educated, they don't give a damn about the ordinary people. The sooner we get rid of this mob, the better. Let's be done.
Listen, thank you so much, thank you. Cheers. So, what's your thoughts on the recent cuts?
I think, well, we're all the same. I think it's terrible.
So, will that impact you and your family?
Well, it does impact every pensioner, doesn't it? Most of them. I mean, most of them it impacts, even if you're £2 out, you know.
Yeah.
So why did they attack the pensioners first?
Well, the other point it is as well, single person council tax seems to be next on the list.
That's it.
That in the budget.
Aye.
Will that affect you?
Well, it'll affect everybody as well. Do you know what I mean?
What's your thoughts then in North Lanarkshire in particular when you see council officers that are on about £200,000 a year? Do you think that those with the broadest shoulders in the authority should be taking the biggest burden of this?
Honestly, aye. They've gave up, son. Listen, they're low interested in pensioners now. Nobody's interested. As they say, we've worked all our days, and what do you get at the end of the day? There's no point paying into pensions now because they take it off you the minute you've got a private pension. They take it off you. So
Listen, thank you so much.
what's the point? Right, son.
Thank you. Right, so we just had the opportunity to see what the good folk in Motherwell think the pension, the winter fuel payment cut for pensioners, and especially when it means to people in Motherwell. A couple of interesting points there, especially when we start talking about salaries and we start talking about means testing, etc. Anybody want to jump?
I don't think there was any surprise in the comments. I mean, people are genuinely worried, you know, and it's an unknown. They don't really know how hard it's going to hit them at this stage until it starts, and it's not going to be that far away. I think it's interesting when you draw it in terms of salaries and individual costs and all this kind of stuff, is that when you think within North Lanarkshire itself, is that we've got people getting paid, individuals being paid more than the First Minister of Scotland. Well, you know, if you look, everybody brings something to the table with their experience and expertise and everything else that's there, so running a big organisation. But when you've got a local authority chief executive officer earning more than the First Minister of Scotland.
What's the salary?
I think First Minister's about 177, 178.
Right.
So it's a hefty hunk of.
I think from memory, chief exec's about 182, but there's also if I'm right, there's an additional payment for running of elections because he's the presiding officer over elections. So
an additional payment for every election.
Another 9,000 or 10,000.
Wow.
Wow.
So
for each.
So potentially,
System, yeah.
it just say there's 2 by-elections this year. There's been a Westminster election.
Yeah.
So
would that be 10,000 per election or 10,000?
My understanding is that it's per election because it's per system of running out an election. Now I may be wrong in saying that, but even if it's not, you've got an extra 9 or 10 grand on top of 100.
well, we can check that out.
Actually, it's quite funny the fact that this week in the press that national sort of news publications are going after Sue Gray for earning more than the Prime Minister.
That's a wonderful story, the Sue Gray. Well, the Sue Gray report that was lauded and we waited on. I've never seen the Sue Gray report. We spoke about it for months and months and months. It was going to give us all the dirt and all the juice about what happened during the pandemic, how government was.
I just think people in North Lanarkshire will find that totally alien, that you've got unelected government civil servants.
She's getting more than Keir Starmer is getting.
Honestly, it's incredible.
Well, it seems as if North Lanarkshire CEO is getting better than everybody, if that's the case.
I'm just saying that the chief executive in Glasgow City, Edinburgh City, South Lanarkshire Council, they're larger than North Lanarkshire, so they'll be close to 200k.
Yeah, I mean, people make the judgment call as to whether they see value for money. I mean, a bit like footballers.
That's the question.
Are footballers worth it? Are chief executives worth it? Are anybody in prominent positions worth the level of monies that they get? And people have an opinion, but
in fairness, I don't think the chief executive of the North Lanarkshire Council sets his own salary. That will come from somewhere, Coslar or whatever it may be. And I do think we have to put that caveat out there.
Absolutely.
That's certainly no.
I mean, it's not a dig at any individual, it's just recognition.
Astounding, the salary level.
It's recognition that within a local authority area, a working class local authority area, you've got individuals working for the council making £200,000, and the very poorest, the most vulnerable, are having their winter fuel payment reduced.
I just find it strange, and there's a lot of people and talent. I've said that before, because you need that to run an organisation the size of North Lanarkshire Council. But I think in total, when you've got a spend across, I think it's 14 or 15 chief officers we've got, or senior people within council just now, and the kind of annual salary spends over £2 million, just on that basis.
Just on chief officers?
Just on chief senior officers that's there. So you're bringing in expertise, I absolutely get that. But by the same token, you then got, we recently had a senior officer leave, which we didn't get an awful lot of information about at the end of the day, and maybe we're not privy to. Audit.
Internal audit
and risk, I think the title was. But you get someone there, and I don't know specifically, but it was about 130,000 a year job. But again, the chap just seemed to leave North Lanarkshire Council, and there wasn't an awful lot of explanation about it. And as I say, maybe as elected members, we're not really entitled to that level of information, but a kind of slight notification, I think, would have been reasonable.
Who walks away? Who walks away from a 120, 130,000 a year job? You cling on like grim death.
£200,000 a year job, but it's like...
That isn't anything at all to do with the whole meals contract, is it, do you think?
It was around that time, Greg, but it wouldn't be for me to say.
No. Right, okay.
Peculiar though.
Let's move it on for there, because I think we're opening a wee Pandora's box there, and just at that point, it's lovely to be able to make a disclaimer. This is about our personal opinions and beliefs. We are not acting as elected members of North Lanarkshire Council. We are acting solely as residents with an opinion, and it just so happens we know how the council works. So thank you very much for that.
I think we've also got to say that some of the comments that I make certainly are from residents in North Lanarkshire that have voiced it to us. So it's not just a case of us sitting here sometimes and spouting forth our own opinions. A lot of what I will bring forward to the table is comment from people, constituents.
So I go to Tesco, I go to Morrison's, I go to the bowling club. Anywhere I go, people will... Absolutely. People will share their views, their frustrations, their annoyances, and much of what we talk about here is representative of that.
I don't really think we have to dwell much longer on this subject matter. Are we happy to move on then?
As long as just get your sleeping bags out, get your gloves, scarves, woolly hats, and get ready for a long, cold, challenging winter.
I think it's a massive faux pas for Labour to try and pretend that this is somehow in relation to the black hole, when you consider the total cost saving in this is only over £1 billion, and to say that equates to the £40 billion black hole that they're currently facing. My goodness.
They've been accused for years of being Tories in disguise, and this is proof positive that we were all correct.
But again, it also equates straight right back, because the apple doesn't fall far for the tree. So when you think about it within North Lanarkshire, every year the most pessimistic budget, £60 million black hole, £70 million black hole. Jerry, I'm not getting you started.
No, you are. You've already started it. No, absolutely not, because we need to warn the good people of North Lanarkshire about what is coming down the line. And not necessarily just what's coming down the line financially. It's the verbal diarrhea that will come before it, and who will be blamed for it. When the truth of the matter is that it's decisions of individuals within North Lanarkshire Council who have put us in the position where we are constantly behind the 8 ball. And I remind every council taxpayer in North Lanarkshire to pay attention to some of the budget discussions that we're about to have this year, because the payments for PFI and PPP are going to mirror almost exactly what the perceived deficit is going to be in North Lanarkshire Council. So there's not a great deal of work that needs to be done about it. This deficit that we are going to be working through over the next 3 years was created by a Labour administration back in the early 2000s.
Just a final point, if I can. I know you want to move on, it's there, Greg, but I think you're right that I've only been involved with the last couple of budgets, and it's demoralising when that information comes out, and it seems to be an ever-increasing cuts and savings and everything else that's got to be made within the council. And what would really worry me is if that you got to the stage where you had, we mentioned senior officers and senior officials that actually run the council very well, is that if you started to see, you know, numbers of these retiring or leaving or just kind of, you know, giving up positions or posts that's there in significant roles, that to me would be a real concern as well, because you're losing a lot of experience and talent.
It's like any organisation, isn't it? Again, when you come near retirement age and your package is so lucrative that you would be foolish to say no. So really, in effect, you've got to ask yourself, and again, we've seen it in North Lanarkshire, we've seen it in other organisations and local authorities, when that number reaches its significant height.
Cha-ching!
So it's down to, do you know what, sail right off into the sunset.
We happen to have at the table someone who's
Pensions expert.
What kind of figures might we be talking about for individual pots, David?
Oh, jeez.
When that ching hits.
Well, in public sector schemes, it's there. So if let's just say you're on 200 grand a year or 100,000 a year, because that makes it easier for counting's sake, and you manage to amass your full service that's there, is that you could easily be leaving with an annual salary of up and above £50,000 a year.
An annuity.
An annuity payment of on that region, if you've amassed that full final.
So you don't need to work, you just get
on top of your lump sum. And your lump sum could easily be into hundreds of thousands.
And that comes out of the council budget?
It comes out the superannuation scheme. So effectively the superannuation scheme is run separately and the contributions are made by North Lanarkshire Council. So this goes back to, dare I say it, the kind of budgetary issue where there was savings and pensions.
I've got a legitimate question, right? Because I'm no awfully sort of up to date in relation to how pensions work.
Okay, see with your outfit, you're not up to date.
Listen, you just keep coming back with those cotton balls. I'm happy for you to throw them. So wage pensions, David, because again, I've never really paid much attention. I think I've always lived in that majority category. I think that there'll never be a tomorrow, so you live for today, right? Foolish as that may be. With, let's say, we were talking about salaries there, a chief executive about £180,000 a year, and then £10,000 for every additional sort of by-election. Rightly or wrongly, I'm not really going to dwell too much on the fact of that, but I'm asking for a pension perspective. Would it be more incentivised then that basically for every by-election you had that £10,000, would that go straight right into your pension contribution? Would that probably be the way that worked? So that £10,000 goes in, that potential £10,000 comes in for the council, so and for tax purposes, that maybe...
Yes, a lot of different ways it's here. So effectively, your earnings, so your contributions that are paid towards your individual pension pot are based on your earnings.
Right.
There is something, without getting too technical, there is something called a salary sacrifice system, where you can actually opt to give up part of your earned income that goes directly to your pension. So instead of, let's take that £10,000 example that you've given. So you could elect that £10,000 payment just get paid straight to your pension. And what that does is reduce, because you don't actually receive it, it reduces your tax and national insurance contributions, and it also saves the employer money because effectively it's deemed not as earned, well, it's earned income, but it would still go towards your pension.
Right.
So in theory, yes, it could go directly to pension. It would certainly increase your pension pot regardless, because the percentage of that level of earnings goes towards your pension pot at the end of the day.
So you can retire earlier than the full of that pot gets.
The pot is, the sooner you can probably hang up your boots, absolutely sure.
That's curious. By the way, I'm making no insinuation. I absolutely know nothing about a chief executive's pension contribution or any of that. I'm just curious how it would work. Yeah.
It would be interesting if across any local authority there was a kind of a pattern of behaviour where regimes who've maybe been at the top of their game for maybe 10 years.
Incentivised to disappear early, then would you know?
Absolutely. And well, if you disappear early, right, you disappear with a big fat wad of cash, right? You've got your lump sum payment, you've got your 50 grand or so annuity, which is a wage in retirement, and you don't need to deal with any.
When we were first elected back in 2017, there was a senior manager within the council for social work, and I remember it being reported in the press at that time that her final pension, etc., equated to nearly just under £1 million. Just under £1 million.
That would be in the realms of what pension
for public service, for public service, local government, and you're walking away with just under £1 million. It's astronomical figures.
And one of the local authority areas that's got the highest levels of poverty, where the indicators are so high in that respect. People will likely, listening to this, be a bit annoyed. Actually, they'll be feeling the pinch themselves, and they'll be looking enviously on at those who have been fortunate enough to have good careers.
Winter fuel payment, that's what it comes back to. It comes back to the winter fuel payment. Why are we taking it from those most vulnerable in our society when we've got clearly individuals with very big, broad shoulders just in the local authority alone? That's not to count every other local authority. Why are we not looking to tax them more?
I just think one of the proposals that were put forward, reported in the press certainly, was the taxation of the lump sums and whether there's a restriction in a lump sum. I think there's a restriction just now on private pension lump sums that you can't take any more than 168,000, 170,000 as a lump sum. Now, when you think to produce that, you've almost got a fund of 800,000. That is just, it's nonsense figures, because the vast majority of people who contribute to the pension plans and retire, at 60, 65, 70, as it seems to be heading this year, are nowhere near these figures.
No.
Absolutely nowhere near. So there is this top echelon of high earners that the Labour government traditionally should and could have looked at in terms of retrieving or restricting the benefits that could come out for the particularly wealthy.
We need to move on now, and on that note, no problem, I'm just a rubbish host, that's all it is. So
agreed.
I like that wee bit.
I like that wee bit as well. It's no often we get good contribution from him, so well done.
Thanks very much, you're very welcome.
So, moving on then, swiftly, since we've tried to move on for that contentious issue of winter fuel payments, etc.
Oh, it's cold in here.
My goodness.
David will feel that more than most, because he's hitting that. He's going to hit that age.
I think I've already hit that age, Jerry.
Qualified pensioner.
No, thanks very much.
Away!
Yeah.
Moving on.
Anyway, back to political highlights of the week. Funnily enough, I'm going to get my big sack out again. My mail.
Normally one of us lead on that. I'm going to devolve that to you. What's your highlight of the week?
My political highlight of the week is Education Committee, Jerry, and calamitous decisions from the convener. And funnily enough, as I say, I was going into my big sack there to pull out an email. Oh, there we go, there's the email. And the question that we were asked this week was, Greg, thanks very much for standing up for the parents' school transport. There was loads of numbers in there. Can you explain what the numbers mean? So I thought I would take this opportunity just to try and highlight to people, oh, you've got a list of standing orders, Barry. You've got a list, look how prepared you are. Yes. Look at how prepared you are. So,
a wonderful document.
I want to highlight first and foremost, when a member in any council committee turns around and says standing order, or I want to invoke a standing order, what they're effectively doing is invoking the rules of council. And these rules of council are based on the Local Government Act, and that's where they're kind of derived from. And everything within that document that Jerry has to relate back to that act. Now, it's to keep order, keep rules, and make sure that all elected members don't get too distracted and go in tangents and keep to the format that is previously agreed. That's the principle of standing orders. So when we got to education this week, and you were with me,
I was there, great.
Committee, and I'm going to cut between wee clips as well, just so that people can get a general feel of that. And to be honest, the sort of whitewash and shutdown that took place by the convener of education, because we were obviously prepared that I was coming along to raise the subject matter. And the subject matter was in relation to a 1,700 plus strong petition in relation to parents across the authority who wanted to raise their disdain in relation to safe walking routes that the council prescribed, but more importantly the budget cut to school transport. Now, within the Education Committee, we started off with a point of order, and that point of order comes under Standing Order 46, and I'm going to read this. A member who's addressing the meeting shall cease speaking immediately when a point of order is raised until the point in question has been decided by the chair, who shall be the sole and final judge as to competency and validity of the point of order. A member raising a point of order shall provide a sufficient explanation to the chair on why they believe there has been a breach of these standing orders. Now, the breach of standing orders was, the petition was submitted, say, mid-August or whatever it may be, and at the tail end of August, and the Education Committee wasn't until sort of start of September. When was the Education Committee? 8th of September, 9th of September, whatever it may be. But it was urgent business. The petition is urgent business. It's got to be heard. But the answer that came back for the council was it wasn't submitted in time to meet the agenda. But yet we have a convener who can use his discretion to allow any agenda item onto the committee, and that can be debated and discussed.
You'll often see conveners of committees, and indeed the provost, take advice from officers of the council, officers from legal and democratic services. Does the convener of that committee or the provost have to take the advice of legal and democratic services?
No, they don't have to take it. But again, culture within North Lanarkshire and the way the party system works is the majority of people are told that they will take that advice. Now, arguments coming through officers, albeit it's elected members that make the decisions. To be honest, I've never seen a convener in the 7 years that I've been an elected member overrule the advice that has been given.
That was my next question.
And I think if we actually went away and trawled through every committee decision, etc., I think we'll find that there's been none, probably, for time immemorial, because ultimately you're going to be the one that jeopardises your enhanced payment for being a convener. I doubt it.
I've never seen it in the 2 years that I've been here, and often, and this is it's not a criticism of anyone, but often when the advice comes from legal and democratic, it can be beneficial to the administration for it not to be discussed.
So here's the thing, what document do they refer to? So you're sitting there and you're the convener and you've got someone from legal and democratic or someone sitting next to you. What document do they rely upon?
That document, standing orders, right, so they rely on the Act and the Local Government Act.
So we've got Local Government Act and we've got standing orders that's there. Now, surely if you're in a paid position as a convener, with the enhanced payment, I don't know what that is, they vary from committee to committee, it doesn't matter what that is that you have relevant knowledge, or you should have relevant knowledge yourself to interpret standing orders.
Yeah.
So why
justification for the decision not to hear it then? So the way I always look at officers' interpretation is the convener is looking for an out. That's it. And the officer can provide that out. Now, rightly or wrongly, as I said again, I'm not being disparaging towards officers, absolutely not. Their job is to advise on standing orders, especially for legal and democratic. But it just seems every single time that anything at all contentious ever has risen, or anything at all of significant public interest, that those standing orders and its interpretation, which is the most important point, is who the individual is interpreting and what the explanation of that interpretation is. And then you get to us who are arguing the case to say, well, no, that's no my interpretation of that. But ultimately the chair has the ruling decision. So he can say the officer is right, his interpretation is correct.
See, this is the bit that gets me with some of this, is that the standing orders, and there's also, I'll not go down the Councillor Code of Conduct route, okay,
No.
we'll save that for another day, but that's another document that is subjective and it's open to interpretation.
Completely subjective. Completely.
It should be, as is this situation, based on evidence, as far as I'm concerned. And the evidence to me in this particular case, when I was watching this committee, because I'm not part of it, is that the evidence and facts was that a petition was lodged with 1,700 people that have expressed major concerns about child safety, and yet the interpretation by that particular convener was it was non-urgent business.
Non-urgent business.
An educationalist.
There's a teacher.
As I understand it, an educationalist who deems that the safe transportation to and from school for our young people is and I'll tell you how non-urgent it was last week. A child was run over.
Yeah.
I heard that. Yeah.
So,
Well, it's not. But again, this is the issue. The issue here is again, since the decision of school transport cuts and the introduction of safe walking routes, there has been about 5 or 6 news stories, national news stories, in relation to accidents happening with children on their way to or from school. The issue I have is the insensitivity in North Lanarkshire Council. When North Lanarkshire Council was responding to these press articles, they should be using safety crossing zones. They should be sticking to the safe walking route. That didn't happen in school time. Again, we're getting all these sort of crass.
The one that really got me was that they referred back to it as the legal obligation of the parent or carer to ensure that the child reaches school safely.
Yeah.
I liked, there was a better one than that, David. The better one from that came from the Labour MPs, the local Labour MPs, Pamela Nash, and
I read her.
who
I read
were
her.
pleading with the Scottish Government to save North Lanarkshire Council from themselves, change the rules, save us from ourselves and stop us making these stupid, careless decisions.
I don't really think she got the memo, did she?
I don't think so.
Anyway, going back to standing orders, very dry, very boring subject matter. However, what people would have seen is me recite a whole raft of numbers, point order, and then we get to point order 23.
Point order, Chair. Point order, Chair. Councillor Lynn. Thank you. Under Standing Order 46, I wish to make the following point of order. Convener, a petition was submitted to this committee on the 21st of August 2024. Confirmation was provided by the Chief Officer of Education Method. A report would be produced and presented at the next Education Committee. This one, when pushed for a specific date, this changed to November Committee. I was later advised that the item did not meet the timescale for agenda items to be considered. An appeal was lodged with the Chief Officer for Legal and Democratic Services on Friday the 6th of September, in which the response provided no written. Today I received a response which provided no rationale 2 hours prior to this meeting. The petition garnered over 1,700 signatures and specifically asked 1. Opposed to the current school transport cuts until a thorough review can be conducted. 2. Initiate a comprehensive review of the safe walking routes, including input from parents, schools and independent safety experts to ensure that all routes are genuinely safe for the children. 3. Provide clear and detailed information, the decision-making process that led to the designation of these safe routes. 4. Schedule a full debate in the next meeting in North Lanarkshire.
Now just stop here 2 minutes please. Do you have a question on this?
There's a point of order coming, Chair. The point of order is just about to be stated. To discuss the issues where a roll call vote on the necessary mitigations the Council can introduce to ensure the safety and well-being of all children affected by these transport cuts. The point of order is, given the detail within the petition and its relevance as a motion, I wish to invoke standing order 59 and have the petition heard today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lennon. Just for clarity also, school transport is not on this agenda for today's committee. Secondly, I am aware that you have had a petition through and the officers have received your petition. I have been assured that this petition has been dealt with in line with the procedures agreed by Council on the 9th of June 2022, and the report will be presented at the next meeting of the committee, which is the 19th of November.
Chair, thanks very much for that. Can you confirm then that you're refusing that point of order and the request for it to be heard under Standing Order 59?
Correct, as part of Standing Order 14.
Chair, order then under Standing Order 46.
Councillor Lynn, can I just stop you there, please? Can I remind you of Standing Order 14? I'm the Chair.
Chair, it's also within Standing Orders that you must take point of orders.
Which I have done. I've given you the...
Chair, there's an additional point of order I wish to make under Standing Order 36.
Councillor Lynn, just give me 2 seconds, please.
Chair, Standing Order 23 may expedite matters.
So can I confirm, are you saying Standing Order 46 or Standing Order 23?
Standing Order 46, but I'll be referencing 23.
So Councillor Lynn, can I remind you, what is your point of order?
Yeah, I'm requesting that this item be heard under Standing Order 23 and is added as an emergency piece of business to this agenda as a motion given the public interest and legitimate concerns of children's safety raised by parents across the authority, in particular the Save the NLC School Bus campaign. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lynn. So if I just remind you, Standing Order 15, restriction of business, except in case of business required by the statute to be transacted at a meeting of the Council, any other business brought before that meeting by the Chair as a matter of urgency, no business shall be transacted at the meeting of the Council other than that specified in the summons relating to thereto. Business which has not been specified in the summons may be considered by adding such business to the agenda of the meeting provided in the opinion of the Chair, and the same is relevant, competent and urgent.
Point order 23 is stipulated that we can take any matter and raise that as a motion at committee, and that's what we did, and again that was refused.
In that case then, Chair, under point of Standing Order 46.
Councillor Lynn,
Chair,
I'm asking you to stop disturbing while the Chair is speaking, please.
Absolutely, Chair. Are you finished?
Councillor Lynn, can I just remind you of Standing Order 14?
Yes, Chair, I'm fully aware of Standing Order 14 since your administration invoked it previously, but...
Then the next one that we put forward was the amendment of standing orders under Standing Order 57. And what we wanted to do was incorporate an additional subsection to that under category G. It only goes up to F. So we look to try and incorporate that petitions should be heard as emergency business. Again, that doesn't fall to committees, but I'm sure you'll find it certainly does fall to committees.
Point of Order 46, and requesting this item be heard under Standing Order 57 to be implemented. Amending Standing Orders, Chair, and propose the following amendments. Motion, this Council agrees to amend Standing Order 16 to state a category G. A committee will add a petition hearing as an emergency business to the agenda with no time constraints. And give you time to look at that, Chair.
So just to confirm, you're now saying Standing Order 57?
Standing Order 57, and that comes under amendment of Standing Orders.
So Standing Order 57 states this is not for the committee, this is for the Council to decide this, Councillor Lynn.
Chair, I think you find it also covers the idea of committees as well.
Yes. So again, it's not a matter for this committee, Councillor Lennon. So if I remind you again, I've already given you the brief and the answer to what you've already had regarding your petition, and that is the agreement that in the petition and the answer which stands. So again, if I remind you of Standing Order 14.
Chair, thanks very much. Final point of order then, under Standing Order 46. I wish to call under Standing Order 56 to suspend standing orders to allow the petition to be heard. Thank you.
Chair.
Councillor.
Convener, under Standing Order 58, can I suggest that we move to business, as the business before the floor has got an agreement within this committee? Can I suggest through your chair that we move to the agenda?
Thank you. Do we have a... Thank you.
Point of order on that proposal there, Chair, that this has relevance and competency for this committee, as the petitions process will clearly explain that petition must be heard at this committee. Thank you.
So, Councillor Lennon, I'm going to pass over to advice, but I just remind you again that I have given you the answer to what response you have had regarding your petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Just to clarify, a motion to suspend standing orders to consider an additional item of business which has been determined as non-urgent in accordance with standing orders would be a contravention of paragraph 2.4 of Schedule 7A to the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will we'll move to agenda 2.
Apologies, Chair, again.
Councillor Lennon.
Understanding Order 56.
Councillor Lennon, yeah. I remind you again of agenda or standing order 14.
Yep. Chair, I would like to advise that this is emergency business and it has relevance and competency for this committee. There was a standing order invoked in relation to the suspension of standing orders that should go to a vote. I don't understand why we're bypassing that process.
Councillor Lennon, you've already had a response to this, and I'm just going to refer you to Standing Order 50 to reflect on that.
So I would still propose the suspension of standing orders, Chair. Councillor Lennon, just to clarify, the convener had received from you an urgent item of business which he deemed not urgent. Therefore, the contravention of that stands as previously provided in the advice to the committee. Thank you. Chair, can I just clarify from that point that this issue is not deemed to be urgent enough for discussion at this committee?
Councillor Lennon, we've already had a reply to Councillor Lennon, as you know, and the reply, as I have said, of the petition with the details, and we're now going to move to business. Sorry, can you put your microphone on, please?
Sorry, just one further point of clarification. I was saying that the issues relating to the safe transportation of your children to school is of a non-urgent nature.
So if I just remind the Chamber and yourself again, school transport is not on this agenda, as you can clearly see, and the petition was sent in. Councillor Lennon had a response regarding the petition, and he has been given clear indication that the petition has been received and it will be brought to the next committee. Councillor Damaso, last question please.
Convener, can I just clarify that on the Standing Order 50 we should refer to, you're threatening to eject a member for following this line of questioning in due process? Clarification that that's the case.
So Councillor Damaso, I have referred him to remind himself of Standing Order 50, and if he continues to disrupt, then I would. It was a referral to Standing Order 50. I'm speaking, please, as a chair, and so I'm referring Councillor Lennon to Standing Order 50 if required. However, we're now going to move to to normal business. Item 2, do we have any...
Craig, can I remind you at this point of Standing Order 14?
Go on then, Jerry. I'm sure he will.
Decision of the Chair on all matters within the responsibility shall be final and shall not be open to question or discussion. When the Chair rises to speak, the member, if any, who is addressing the meeting shall cease to speak. The Chair shall be entitled, in the event of disorder occurring, to adjourn the meeting at a time as determined by them.
Which is hilarious when you consider Standing Order 13. Jerry, read Standing Order 13 for us.
It shall be the duty of the Chair to preserve order and ensure fairness in debate, to decide all points of order and matters of competency and relevancy, with the assistance of the Chief Executive to ensure that standing orders are observed, a crucial point, and finally to decide all questions of procedure for which no express provision is made under the standing orders.
So that final paragraph constitutes immediately the fact that this petition should have been heard at that committee. And what were we told? We were told it's not on the agenda, Councillor.
You were told to reflect on Standing Order 50.
Yes, you were.
When I was threatened that I would be ejected.
You were told to reflect
But
on...
did you see his rebuttal on that when Paul asked that question? Are you threatening a member to eject them for this committee? No, I'm merely referencing him to familiarise himself with it.
Reflection. Greg, would you like to share with the good people of North Lanarkshire what Standing Order 50 is?
Standing Order 50 is the ejection of that member. There is a vote, and it's not the first time that vote has been enacted on me for asking difficult and pertinent questions. And I will continue to do so. And
is there, in your opinion, a pattern of behaviour where in committees when challenging committees and council, where when challenging questions are being brought to the floor by members of particular political parties, that Standing Order 50 is now being used as a
tool. It's weaponised, of course.
To shut elected members up.
So again, everyone is elected on an equal footing. And to be honest, again, this is where not just North Lanarkshire Council, but I would say every body of government and legislator fails. Mm-hmm. If you look at the House of Commons, in there you can argue till you're blue in the teeth and you can make way and you can have proper and serious debate on matters. But you get to Scottish Government, I would say lessers, but there's still an opportunity for debate and constructive sort of wranglings to try and get points across, etc., because you're standing up for your electorate. When you get to a council level, then you're being dictated to. You're being dictated that you can make one point and then have one supplementary. Debate is non-existent within a local authority, especially North Lanarkshire Council.
Do you know what upset me more than anything about that whole debacle at the Education Committee? Not that the substantive point itself was emergency in my mind, and urgent, absolutely. But what I found really annoying after the fact that you were advised to reflect on Standing Order 50, which could have seen you ejected, following a vote following, as I would state,
standing orders.
Standing orders to the letter, that you should reflect on that because it was difficult and it was challenging. But what I found really poor was the fact that your standing order was allowed to be intercepted by another elected member, and the chair allowed that to happen.
Well, we've not even touched on what he deemed was urgent business as well once we start talking about the Deputy Provost's comments. But the point that I would make right now is the final point of order, which we have precedent for in North Lanarkshire
Indeed we do.
And which was completely overridden and roughshod. And again, we come back to the point of suspension of standing orders under Standing Order 56. Now, normally what would happen is, we wouldn't get anywhere near normally the discussion points. It would just be straight to a vote of suspension of standing orders. You're not normally allowed to say what you're looking to suspend standing orders for, because it immediately goes to a vote. And Labour certainly do not want you voicing whatever the point is that you're looking to try and suspend standing orders for.
Can I read it,
Yeah.
Greg? Because this is important for people who, and you don't need to be an anorak, but you need to know how your council works, right? So when a request comes from the floor to suspend standing orders under Standing Order 56, it's this: on a motion made at any time during a meeting, the council shall be entitled to suspend one or more of these standing orders so far as regards any business, but only if 2/3 of the members participating and voting for that purpose shall so decide. So at the point at which standing orders, a request comes through for standing orders to be suspended, the first thing that should happen is that it goes to a vote.
Yes.
Right? In order for your point of order to be clearly heard and expressed and respected.
Yep.
Right? Did a vote take place, Greg?
No, it did not. It was again overridden, and it was overridden on the premise. And this is the ludicrousy what unfolded. It was non-urgent business. It was not on the agenda. And again, you're looking at these explanations as it's coming for the convener, and you're looking and you're going, are you for real? But the most contentious point is this 6-month rule applies. It was a budget decision. And so we can't discuss that here. Well, two things. One, that budget was set in February.
February, 2 years ago.
Yeah. And in addition to that as well, we also have the position here that this is relevant and competent to that committee, because the petitions process would dictate that when the subcommittee couldn't make a decision like that, we have to sit in front of education. So it'd be shot down like that. Then you're looking, well, not only is the petitions process completely and utterly, not even worth the cigarette paper it's written on, but now all of a sudden we're getting to a stage where we've got deliberate blocking, and potentially, because I did write to the convener and ask him this very question, did you deliberately mislead committee? I'm still awaiting a response, and that's over a week I've been waiting on a response.
I don't think you'll get a response. I think that's a given. But there's a number of things that I've said on this podcast before, is that the people in North Lanarkshire don't care what colour rosette that you wear when you go into that chamber. You are there to represent the views and the concerns and everything else that had been brought before the council. 1,700 people reckoned that they had major concerns about child safety. And forgive me, but if an education committee and convener deems that as non-urgent business, when you look at the rest of the agenda items that was on that committee paper, they're all relevant, all got to be decided upon. Yeah. But child safety, and that's not deemed as urgent. The other thing that got me, Greg, and sorry, I know that it's just that in that process, so the process wasn't followed as Jerry's outlined there as well about standing orders. Conveners just decided, no, we're going to shut you down. That's all that was. But then, in between all this, is that he accepts a fellow Labour councillor's intervention of a point of order which actually doesn't stand in relevance to the process that's there at that point, to move forward and to shut that request down. And he took it. Yeah. He took it on board. Yeah. So people need to be aware.
He also allowed for a deputy prophet's comments that all children in North Lanarkshire are feral.
Not all of them. But
the majority are young people and not young men.
Feral murderers with knives.
But that was deemed that was acceptable for that to be presented. But he gave him an out, by the way, which I was just going to say absolutely shocked at. Yes. Absolutely shocked at, because when I raised the point of order in relation to his derogatory remarks towards young people in North Lanarkshire, and then all of a sudden we have a wave.
It moved to a national issue.
But also I found it curious as well.
Surely he was asked to retract.
Well, he was. I'll come on to that in a second. But the interesting point is you had once not one person interjected in that contribution.
Well, you did.
But I did.
You did.
And then we get to his contributions over, and all of a sudden Labour's outraged. And then we get to the SNP, they're outraged. And so much so they're on a vote of no confidence now in the Deputy Provost and demanding his resignation. But here's the irony in this, and again, one of the SNP councillors clearly doesn't know irony, so I'll need to explain this and go very, very slowly for him. But The irony in this is that was deemed as urgent business for that individual to make that contribution, and yet when we're talking about school transport and safety,
And a 1700
and a 1700
strong petition.
strong petition, that's not deemed as urgent. What twilight zone do we live in?
I'll tell you what twilight zone that we live in, right? There is, and I'll need to be careful about what I say here.
Yeah, 'cause I know where you're going, mate.
But it has to be said, people need to follow timelines about events that are going to be taking place, and then look at the date that this particular agenda item is delayed until, so that this agenda item will not be heard at committee until November. It's a hot topic. Possibly.
And it's after the 10th of October.
It's after the 10th of October.
Yep.
It's after.
That is on the 10th of October, Jerry.
Follows the 9th.
It follows the 9th, and it's immediately before the 11th.
Because, funnily enough, I was going to get into that big sack of emails again and pull that out, and we did receive a question, was it a deliberate act to filibuster on the idea of school transport? No for us, for the convener of education, because that is effectively what took place. It was filibustering, there was nothing else to it. And in addition to that, was it a deliberate act because they know they have a by-election coming up, and they've got two
That is on the 10th, isn't it? There's two.
Two by-elections. So they couldn't have school transport being held at that education committee. And by the way, I'm happy to share the email and maybe even just put that up, just so that we've got a complete clarity on.
Well, we're not acting as councillors here.
No, listen, I understand that.
Historically, let's be absolutely clear, this is the second time that we have got. So the last time we were in the election situation, we had the closure of facilities situation that came up. And exactly what happened there was that proposal was put forward. How we arrived at the actual recommendation to close, was it 39?
39
different facilities, when all that had actually been requested, as I remember it, was a review, not a recommendation to make for closure. So somewhere in there was a there was a shift. But anyway, so at that point we've got the leader of the Labour Party in North Lanarkshire.
on the ropes.
Oh, without doubt on the ropes.
And he's elected.
But we go back to the timing. We're talking about the timing because it was about the by-election in
October.
So matter of days, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, El Presidente Jim Logue makes the decision without coming back to council that will now be shelved.
Ignored council, actually.
And
Ignored committee.
And the process and these standing orders and everything else that's there is that it was just the decision taken. Now everybody welcomed it, of course they did, because we want to save the facilities that's there. But when you look at the process and you look at the political implications of it and the timings of it, are we reliving that?
Well, the interesting point for me here is, and we look at the previous performance for the so-called main opposition. The main opposition at that point was trying to get every press headline that it could possibly garner and various other things, and they called a vote of no confidence in Jim Logue, even though numerically it was never going to happen. Every single person that's involved in politics knew it was nothing more than a candy wrapper being presented to the leader of the council. But again, where we end up here this time, and funnily enough, I'm going to cut to the video in a wee minute of this. We end up with an SNP group who has been out there publicly throughout the process of school transport, trying to take a position and it's standing up for the parents.
They didn't come out to support the parents before it in the demonstration.
Well, there's an interesting point to this because again, their silence was deafening at that committee, because ultimately, regardless of what the political issues are, if you don't like us or whatever it may be, that's irrelevant. The point means that school transport should supersede or ascend any personal grievance or political grievance that you have. So that would have been your ideal opportunity. Well, if they're getting a petition here, we want to come in with our aspect to our motion, or we want to test bed what our motion's going to be, that working group. And again, have that presented on the day. No, they didn't do that. Because I kept going on and didn't allow for the issue not to be discussed. And then finally it led to, I think it was a expenditure report that came in, and we put forward an amendment, and the amendment was to try and have school transport heard as a motion or an amendment at that stage. And one of the offers of that amendment put in, I hope the irony is not lost, considering some contractor had 4 contracts which equated to over £3.8 million, which is the cost saving of school transport. So that one comment, we had an SNP member try to weaponise that last paragraph because he doesn't understand irony, and I thought, my goodness, there's your effective opposition right there.
You know what really worried me about that, Greg? And you're right, was that part because it was totally lost.
Sat silent, the entire committee did not make any contribution. That individual was normally very quick.
It did make a contribution, but it wasn't in relation to school transport.
Let's go back, because you've got a party supposedly that's putting forward to try and protect school transport, and you've got another individual, yourself in this case, that gives them the opportunity to score basically an own goal.
Not just once, not just once, not just twice, not just 3 times. It was 6 times in total. 6 times.
If you get presented with the opportunity as the opposition party, and whether you like what has been put forward or whether you like the individual that's making the point that's been put forward, which is let's be honest, is more to the point that's there, is that you've got an opportunity there. Now, if they had stepped in as supposedly the main opposition group that's there to say, actually, this is really important, and we also agree,
It would have elevated
it would
the
have
entire
elevated to the
issue.
point. Now, why didn't they?
I can't answer that, David.
Why would you not take that opportunity?
Because
To bring it forward.
and I've had the opportunity to speak to parents, and I've seen the SNP's leader email to parents. And within that email, and I better watch I'm not sharing confidential information again, or she'll try and take a standards complaint. But hey, so the communications to parents was, you will not believe this, right? This is how petty this is. The requisition order that was put forward by us to ask for a special meeting of full council, you need a wet signature for. As if you need all elected members. It's only 19 members that we need signature. It's only 19, we have 10. But, and the SNP could have easily come in and took over on that. That wasn't an issue, right? But here's the interesting point.
Be honest, we actually hoped that was what would happen.
Be what would happen, because ultimately we were happy to step back and give them credit to whatever shape or form that would have been. But the interesting point is that leader's remarks back that you need a quarter of elected members. Well, we've already got that, it's 19, we've identified that. We've had 2 resignations for 2 councillors with immediate effect. 2 by-elections have been called because of it. So it takes us to the 19 number. In addition to that as well, the wet signatures aspect, now an electronic signature within the council is widely accepted. To put anything forward other than that is disingenuous, regardless of whether it's there.
It's nonsense.
So it's a load of
Tells you in standing order 20. I need to refer back to standing order. But when you're submitting a motion, for example, so David and I have submitted motions for the upcoming council, and in standing orders it says that there should be a signature on that. Now, I didn't sign it. I didn't wet sign anything as proposer, and David certainly didn't sign it as seconder. But we sent an email. The emails that we send have signatures at the bottom. There's a facility within Outlook that allows us to do that, and therefore that's taken as it is.
As granted.
So the signature's there.
When I submit a motion, it's just an email. My signature's at the bottom of the page, and it's only an electronic signature. So it's widely accepted in the authority. The next part that I thought was interesting as well is the leader of the SNP put forward that due process has not been followed because that requisition order hasn't been submitted. Now, again, you're not going to submit something that you've not already got the signatures for. Once the 19 signatures are achieved, quite easily, they certainly about 24 councillors, they could easily call for that requisition tomorrow and have it accepted.
Themselves, absolutely.
To date themselves. So it is bizarre, the position that they're taking in this. Do you think it's more to do, and I'm trying to play devil's advocate here because I'm not trying to be too, what would you say, too pessimistic about their approach to this, but would you say it's within their agenda to make sure that they get a motion through that really, if you think about it, the creation of an officer, councillor, working group. Now, by the time that that's implemented, and I've been on working groups within the council, to be honest with you, I went once and I don't attend again. That's how I view them. Now, when you look at the officer working group to try and establish that, and then by the time the officer working group is concluded and it's done its report, many months do you think we're going to be doing the line?
I couldn't even guess.
You're
into the next term.
Just on this topic alone, this is the second time that I'm aware of that the SNP have not joined with ourselves or any other party for that case to bring forward, because we've requested a special meeting on the basis of reallocating budget funds.
Yeah.
And the same requisition order looking for 19 people support was not signed, was not even answered.
Yeah.
About school transport.
We could have saved school transport.
We could have saved school transport. Now they've had the second opportunity to ask them to support the hearing of a petition. Not been taken, not interest, not spoken about, other than the fact some callous statement at the end of the mini debate that took place as you were putting forward with standing orders that's there. And then what we've got is this public profile of a motion that's been put forward by the SNP for social media sound bites, nothing else. That they know they don't have the numbers, unfortunately, to win, but they will, and you know that
potentially, by the way, because like ACC, and I'm just going to remind you, when it was a vote of no confidence in the leader of the council, that was completely staged. Completely staged. And I don't know what your feeling was when I went out of the chamber. It was as if a deal was already cut because not one Labour member made a contribution.
No, it was almost as if they were waiting.
Completely staged.
Do you know? I tried to read the room. When that when the vote of no confidence was proposed, there was not one single Labour councillor in there who flinched.
No. And so
almost as if they'd been prepped to say, right, at this.
That's only your opinion that they were prepped. We don't have any hard evidence for that. So again,
I believe the evidence is belief.
I think the evidence is the fact of their lack of questioning and their lack of support.
Evidence of your eyes and ears. Just use that.
To come back to it again, would it make more sense to me then, considering this was submitted, this motion on the 5th of August. You're talking about full councils not until October. So you practically had a quarter in there where a motion was submitted completely unheard the sort of length of time for this motion. And within it, the motion in the body of the text highlights an officer working group. That is basically it. That's the summary of it all. To discuss safe walking routes.
Yeah. I was going to say the difference here is it's to discuss and ensure that the safe walking routes are safe.
Yeah.
It's no longer correct. It's no longer about pausing it, reviewing it, trying to stop it or anything else.
Yeah.
There's an acceptance that this has now happened.
Yeah.
There's an acceptance that they're no longer challenging it, and there's a mention of primary school kind of provision that's there.
Well, they're there next year. I mean, that is
absolutely. And if you think it's bad enough for high school kids to walk 3 miles to school,
6 mile round trip, David.
So we're going to ask 4 and 5-year-olds to walk 4 miles round trip.
To move this on, gents, because really in effect I've spent a lot of time on this and we need to come to an end. But and it's a major but in all of this, because to be honest, I think that the subject matter is far too important to play politics on. So I am certainly not, and I'm sure you'll know, looking for any political point scoring in this process. So much so, I actually wrote, David, to the leader of the SNP and highlighted, this is too much an important subject matter. I am happy to step back. My group is happy to step back. You take the lead. The 1700 signature petition, I will remove myself as the lead signature and give it to you. Why don't you take the requisition? You have more than enough members to put that special meeting of full council through tomorrow.
And we steam in behind.
And we will support you to the hill in relation to that.
So what was the reply?
None. None, David.
But none that they're not doing it, or none?
No response. And it was given to them in adequate time, and it wasn't just the leader I sent it to, it was the entire SNP group. Now, here's the point in this. If you are going
That's
to
disgraceful.
you're going to be an effective opposition, then the question really has to be asked is, has a deal been cut in acceptance of that motion? Because ultimately, they know for a fact that that motion numerically has no chance of getting past the floor. Because ultimately Labour has made the decision in relation to school transport cuts. It has been a tooth extraction for them. It has caused them more headaches than anything else. So what would be the incentive then for Labour? Now, we are all aware how the numerical advantage works in that chamber. For to say anything otherwise is disingenuous.
Potentially, right? If a deal is done and Labour support it and it goes through, what happens to the petition, the agenda item at the November?
Dies. It is completely and utterly dead. Dead.
6 months.
The 6 month rule would apply.
So it's gone.
So potentially, rather than, and this is the balance of probability, and this is what we have to do, we have to ask ourselves the question, in all likelihood, what is in Labour's best interest? And again, coming back to the point that there's individuals in there that receive enhanced payments for the leader of that council. So the question really is, again, coming back to, is there an effective opposition? Because surely to God, in the most reasonable of terms, it is in your best interest to take forward issues of contention like the petition, and you lead on that, where you've got a complete and utter cast iron guarantee that you'll have the support for the additional members to try and make as much noise to get that through, or do you stick to something that's been submitted 3 months in advance, where we don't know the outcome, because under any other circumstance, numerically in that chamber, Labour will not be given a free vote, the members will not be given a free vote, that is a whipped vote, so they will block vote, the Tories will vote with them along with their independent friends. So that's what we are going to have. Numerically, it is unheard of for any motion like that to get through. If it does go through, I would highlight to individuals watching this at home right now, be very cynical about what the outcome of that working group is going to be.
I'm going to stick my neck out here, right? I doubt that for the duration of this council, we will come across an issue as important, as urgent as this one. I think this was absolutely the opportunity for opposition parties, including ourselves, including the SNP, including the independent councillors. This was an opportunity to show the power of people, the power of the petition. And we have, in my opinion, let the petition itself down. And collectively, I think we need to take responsibility for that.
I disagree a wee bit with that, because I think the more people start to realise how this system works and how it restricts public opinion being heard and debated and voted upon, is that you will see increasing amounts of people beginning to realise. You look at emotive issues like school transport, you look at emotive issues of primary school kids that is coming up next year. I can only imagine what that's going to be like in comparison to this year. That's there. You've still to look at financial aspects in terms of the budget and what the proposed cuts are going to be. Call me cynical if you like, but I also don't believe that the basis of these closures of these recommended facilities has reached its end game, regardless of what Councillor Logue has said. So I think there's going to actually be more and more emotive issues coming.
You think about it. You think about it. School transport highlights a key thing. This has been ongoing since 2017, David. So we had a campaign right away in 2017 when they were looking to reduce it from 3 miles to 2. 2 miles to 3. But here's the point. This is no surprise that Labour has been adamant for years that it wanted to take away school transport. The issue that I have is what fair and democratic process do we have at these committees? What fair and democratic process do we have at this full council? And what legitimate mechanism for discourse do we have within this authority for petitions to be an afterthought? To be an afterthought, because that is effectively what it is. And again, what we have is in my opinion, now again the same allegation could be presented at us. You have politicking take place on matters of significance. And the issue here is it's like Chicken Little scenario. The sky is falling whilst we have, and maybe it is a wee bit too much an emotive subject matter for me, but perhaps it's only because there is a failure in the democratic process.
I agree with you. Wholeheartedly agree. You talk about the numbers that are within chamber, makes it difficult. You talk about politicking. So in theory we're all politicians, loosely, and I really lose that term loosely. But the reason that our group will not be considered or not liked within the chamber, let's be honest, we're not. So we put our councillor...
We're not here to make friends.
When we put our councillor hats on, we're disliked. When we still get...
Because we challenged the perceived wisdom and the status quo,
yes,
and we look to do things differently. And this particular petition, this particular issue, was an opportunity to do things differently. And that's my frustration, because, and I've mentioned this before, and it's a wee mantra that I hold just in life. We're going to do what we've always done.
Yep.
The leader of the opposition in that email, as I understand it, wrote to say that what sensible councillors do is they use the motions and amendment processes to conduct their business. And what we're saying is, right, okay, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Yeah. Let's do it differently. Let's challenge and see if we get a different outcome. And for one reason or another, that opportunity to bring that challenge to the floor was refused.
They're ineffective as an opposition, let's not kid on about it, and for whatever that reason may be, but the bit for me here is they had a clear opportunity at that committee to steal the narrative basically and bring forward an opportunity to have two cracks at the whip, not just one, because ultimately all their eggs are resting in one basket in that full council meeting, which does tell me that either a deal has been cut somewhere to allow that to go through, because that definitely serves the administration's agenda, because it kicks into the tall grass and that working group will take months to establish anything. There is no sort of immediate urgency to deal with that subject matter, or it's a case that they are completely dismissed because numerically they just do not have the numbers. Even we will vote. I've given a cast iron guarantee that we'll vote for that motion.
You've got to question the leadership and their wisdom here, because it is absolutely heads. In terms of the administration, it's heads I win and tails you lose, because if it goes to the motion and it doesn't go through because of the numbers, then it's dead. And if it goes through with the support of the Labour group, then it's kicked into the long grass and it's gone.
And on that note, gentlemen, I think we can safely say we've run out of time this week. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode of What's the Point? Jerry, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
David, thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much for joining.
Cheers, if I may, Councillor Stubbs. Because I think it's an important point. I'm just looking at this wording here, and I'm looking at the last paragraph, and I wonder if the individuals that have written this could maybe clarify, are they suggesting that something untoward has gone on? they're suggesting there's irony that the council uses a contractor for more than one thing. Are they suggesting some sort of... Maybe they want to...
Sorry, Mr Stubbs' words in his own. Thank you. Councillor Lane, is that your reply? Formal reply. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Stubbs. So, as I've referred to, this is